that's coming in right before we got on the air, so we're gonna overgo with that. And yeah, we got a lot of packs, so let's get into it. Let's start with the breaking news. So, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, quarterback Aaron Rodgers has agreed to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The terms have not yet been announced, but we're assuming that it's probably a 1 year deal, something like that. But he is definitely the new quarterback in Pittsburgh. He is going to fly to Pittsburgh within the coming hours, and he is going to perform, participate in mandatory minicamp. So I think as far as this whole saga has gone, first of all, this has gone too damn long for my liking. I'll be honest with you. I mean, are you gonna play or you're not gonna play? Like, what's going on? And this is basically. I know a lot of people would say, you know what, just move on and see if you can get a quarterback during the draft and whatnot. But this is kind of like what you get with an Aaron Rodgers. You know, you're gonna get the great play, the good consistent play. I do believe his best days are behind him, but this is ultimately what you're gonna get with Aaron Rodgers. He is going to rock the black and gold. Um, I don't necessarily agree with this decision. You have a guy who's 42 years old, coming off probably one of his most subpar season as a pro, and the question is, does he have a lot of football left in him? Uh, Honestly, we don't know until he gets there. It's for sure one thing. Pittsburgh definitely thinks that he does because they had two pretty good quarterbacks on their roster last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. As we know, Russell Wilson signed with the New York Giants, and Justin Fields agreed to a 2 year deal with the New York Jets. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. With Aaron Rodgers, you're going to get a lot of hoopla that comes with the caliber of an Aaron Rodgers, and I'd hope that the Pittsburgh organization, I hope they know exactly what they're going to get themselves in because it's pretty much a circus when you have a caliber of Aaron Rodgers. But if he can be any if he can be as good as he was towards the end of last year, then maybe, just maybe, it'll probably work out. They went out and got themselves a stud at wide receiver at DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, in my opinion, is a top 10 wide receiver in the National Football League. So you do have a weapon with that. But the question around this team is, how is their offensive line is going to pan out? Because that was pretty much the Achilles heel with Rodgers in New York. You had the receivers in Garrett Wilson, you had Allen Lazard, but you couldn't protect them. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't care who you got at the helm at quarterback. If you could have Tom Brady right now come out of retirement, if you don't have a good line to protect yourself, you're gonna get creamed 10 times out of 10. Rodgers, Brady, Marino, Manning, you call it. That's just pretty much what it is. Nowadays, in today's football, having that strong nucleus of a strong offensive line is so key to a quarterback's success. So um, definitely breaking news coming into this show. First time we have breaking news in this show. That's pretty cool. But it's interesting to see how Pittsburgh is going to deal with comes with an Aaron Rodgers. So again, Rodgers has agreed to join the Pittsburgh Steelers. The terms has not been announced as of this moment, and he is scheduled to fly to Pittsburgh within the coming hours and perform, participate in. I don't know why I keep saying perform. Participate in the mandatory workouts. So I don't know how this is going to end. Ultimately, Coach Mike Tomlin has been with the Pittsburgh organization for a long time. There's it hasn't been a secret that him and Aaron Rodgers has sort of this bromance, being on opposing teams and stuff like that. You saw the little eye wink from a couple of years ago with them two on the sidelines and stuff like that. And if you hear both gentlemen talk about each other. They talk about each other within the highest level. There's obviously a great substantial gratitude and respect between both of them. So right off the bat, you should have that continuity with Tomlin and Rodgers at the helm for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The question is Rodgers going to have that protection? Is it going to be somebody more than a DK Metcalf that's going to ultimately galvanize this offense and take them to their one to where they should be as far as Pittsburgh Steelers football. My opinion is this process took a little too long, and ultimately it could become a distraction. It could become a distraction for a team, but Pittsburgh organization was obviously left the door open for Aaron Rodgers. They made sure that he came to them at his time. They didn't give him any pressure. If he decided that he wanted to go to Egypt in the middle of minicamp like he did last year, then by all means he was probably going to do that. But ultimately, Pittsburgh elected to go with Aaron Rodgers as opposed to re-signing Justin Fields, who's only 26, and an aging Russell Wilson, but still got some game that he showed within his time with Pittsburgh last year. So we're gonna see how this pans out. This could obviously be a blessing in disguise for Pittsburgh if Rodgers can listen. It's kind of unfair to expect the MVP caliber of Aaron Rodgers to just walk in the door. Despite that he hasn't really played that much football, at least during the offseason. But if he can be as good as he was, because other people, it's easy to overshadow his play considering how awful the Jets was. But those last 8 games, he played all right. He played pretty good. As a Jet fan, I was dare I say I was impressed. But it's probably going to be one of the biggest mysteries in football as far as how he looks, how he feels, and what he can offer to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is obviously short term for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we shall see how this goes. The NFL season will start in September. So the New York Mets has been hotter than a fox in a forest fire lately, winning 9 of their 11 games, and they're one of the best teams in baseball. And they took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers last week. They are currently up 1-0 in the last game of a 3-game set to the Dodgers. And I tell you, for people who sort of got discouraged towards the end of last year, how it ended last year with the Dodgers. I mean, listen, there's a lot of upside to look when it comes to this current New York Mets team. Obviously, we all know about the big signing with Juan Soto and him coming from the Bronx to New York. That's pretty much on any good day a walking 30 home runs and 100 RBI. I believe I said that in a previous telecast on this show. Juan Soto is definitely going to bring fans into Citi Field and provide and fit well with that lineup. I think what has surprised Met fans and even me for the most part is that it's taken this long. But then again, when you're joining a new team, even though it's New York in the sense itself, the fan base, in my opinion, is sort of a little bit different. Obviously, the dimensions where Soto hits a lot of his home runs is towards right field. And I believe right field at Yankee Stadium is 314. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. 314, whereas Citi Field is a little bit wider as far as the dimensions go. But he is right now. He hasn't performed as well as people thought. But again, it's the middle of the season. There's no reason for any Met fans to have a crisis at this point. Juan Soto, like I said in this previous show, he's going to be fine. But let's talk about Pete Alonso, man. Pete Alonso, with all the hoopla that was going on with Juan Soto signing this massive, massive deal with the New York Mets, it's easy to say that Pete Alonso was sort of like the dark horse, the forgotten one throughout this whole entire process. Pete Alonso has just been tearing the ball off the cover. He had two home runs last night in a Mets win against the Dodgers at Chez Ravine, and for a guy who signed a 3-year deal, who was expecting to get the big money contract, he's definitely earning the respect of a lot of Mets fans and pretty much Major League Baseball for obviously those general managers who really didn't believe that he was worth that much money or at least a $200 million contract. I think the way he's performing right now, he's making those people eat his words. He's definitely surprised me for the most part. But when you have a guy who was pretty much the cornerstone of your franchise for the past couple of years, and the new shiny toy sort of comes into town, and it's like the old toy is it's kind of like a Toy Story effect where it's like he was Woody and everybody was excited about having the Woody and stuff like that, and then Andy just got rid of him and got Buzz Lightyear. So uh, it's interesting to see how he has responded to the criticism that he has gotten from New York fans who just wanted him to just sign. But if you really look at the numbers, consider the fact that he towards the middle of the season, his numbers seem to have gone down, but he had a superb postseason and he's off to a red hot start to begin the year. So again, the Mets have won 9 of their 11 games, which is astonishing. They're one of the best teams in the National League. I said off the air, and I'll say it on the air, I have the Mets winning the National League. I believe if this team stays with this current core and makes the proper additions that they have to make during the trading deadline, I think this is the team that Major League Baseball needs to watch out. Uncle Stevie is going to spend that money. Steve Cohen has proven that he can spend that money, considering that he dished off $765 million to Juan Soto in a whopping 15-year deal. So again, when it comes to throwing a bag at a player, that's definitely not a question when it comes to Steve Cohen. The main issue with the Mets and the main worry that has sleepless nights for Mets fans will be health. Health is definitely key for this Mets team. Alonso has to stay healthy, obviously. Juan Soto, for the most part, has proven that he can stay healthy. Obviously, you got Francisco Lindor, who's also off to a great start. I believe his batting average is a little over 300, which is Francisco Lindor-esque numbers if you really think about it. But if this Mets team is able to stay healthy, I do believe, and I don't really look into regular season games, although when you take 2 out of 3 from the defending champs, it is quite impressive. Yankees were in Chez Ravine last week and dropped 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers. So that's a little. Yeah, the Dodgers have been the Yankees' Achilles heel for the most part, at least when it goes back to the World Series and the recent 3-game set with those two. But the Mets is going to be a team to watch for. And what makes this so amazing is that they're doing it in a very competitive division. I mean, just in the National League, aside from the National League in its entirety, the National League East is just so good. You got the Phillies with Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper there, doing their thing. You got the Atlanta Braves, who's always going to be in the mix when it comes to playoff supremacy, and they just got back their superstar and Ronald Acuna. So you got the Atlanta Braves there. You got the Chicago Cubs, who is obviously, aside with the Mets, are one of the hottest teams in baseball too. There, they got Pete Crow Armstrong and Kyle Tucker, leading the way, with things over there too. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add what I think the Mets should add. We're gonna do this early because I know normally the trade deadline is usually the 3rd or 4th week of July. So we're gonna do a little mock prediction as far as who the Mets, in my opinion, should at least consider during the trading deadline. A few things that the Mets are in need for is obviously a center fielder. Brendan Nimmo plays a pretty good center field, but you want somebody that has a little bit more pop and a little bit more efficient when it comes to that. And the first person that comes to mind is two people, and they actually play currently for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that would be Key Brian Hayes and Brian Reynolds. Key Brian Hayes is performing quite well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Seem to dim down within the past couple of weeks or so. But again, this is baseball. It's a 162 game season, and numbers are just gonna go up and down sporadically. That's just basically what the baseball season is. And considering the fact that he has some youth to him. He has some upside. He obviously knows what it is to be around that New York limelight. For people who don't know, Key Brian Hayes, his father, Charlie Hayes, was a part of that 1996 team, Yankee team that won the World Series. So there's definitely a New York connection when it comes to King Brian Hayes. So definitely something that the Mets should explore. But I think the number one name that they should look into should be his teammate, Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds is currently in the third year of a 8-year, $106 million contract, and he's batting 237 right now, which is not what you would expect from a Brian Reynolds, but he plays such an outstanding outfield. He could, although he doesn't really play center field as much, he did have a pretty stellar 2021-2022 campaign at center field for Pittsburgh. He pretty much plays more right field right now, but if you can add that type of bat into the lineup along with Alonso, Lindor, and Soto, you can actually put him. I don't know if they'll do it. If this does happen, obviously this is wishful thinking, and ultimately all this coming into fruition. But if you put that in the middle of the lineup, with that pop and his ability to play center field, that is a win-win for the New York Mets, and will be a key contributor right off the bat. It gives him a fresh start. You're in the limelight now in New York, where you're, as opposed to playing at a smaller market in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I think that's something that the Mets should consider as far as the availability of Brian Reynolds and Key Brian Hayes for the most part, as far as when it comes to the offense. The Achilles heel for the Mets in the playoffs was their bullpen. Their bullpen was just they were horrible. They were just downright horrible. There's no other words to put into it. They were pretty bad during the regular season, and then their bullpen just reared its ugly head during the playoffs. So right now, you got a few decent arms right there, but as far as somebody that could shake things up and add sort of a formal bridge to their closer in Diaz, let's look at a guy like Felix Bautista. I mean, Felix Bautista, just the stature of this guy is just impeccable. It's like looking at Aaron Judge, the picture version of Aaron Judge. I think he's 6'7", throws 95 to 98 miles per hour on his fastball, has devastating stuff when it comes to his breaking pitches. The only Achilles heel with Felix Bautista is obviously he has dealt with a few injuries within the past 2 years. But if you get a guy like that and you put him in the bullpen, it not only boosts your bullpen, but is the perfect bridge, in my opinion, to Edwin Diaz in that bullpen. And obviously, their bullpen needs help. And if you really ask me, if the Mets had a decent bullpen, if they were able to go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers, I ultimately think we would have had our first World Series matchup in 24 years with the Mets and the Yankees. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but considering the fact that they have taken 2 out of 3 towards the Dodgers, they are looking to do the same currently right now. They are up 1-0, and it looks pretty good for the New York Mets. But obviously, the way this team is structured right now, there is something that is missing on both the offense and defensive side. And, starting pitching is another thing. You look at a guy out there like Sonny Gray. Although he wouldn't be my first choice, considering the fact that his first stint in New York didn't go as well, but it just seems like when he pitches anywhere other than New York, he can be when healthy, he can be one of the best pitchers in the game. If you're gonna add a Sonny Gray who automatically can give you a solid 5, 6 innings at best, maybe even more, considering if he has control. The thing with Sonny Gray is when he's on, he's on. But when he doesn't have control, that is the issue, and it has been an issue with Sonny Gray throughout his career. But he was excellent in his Oakland years. I think Yankee fans would like to forget about how he performed when he was with the Yankees. But then, he thrived in Cincinnati, and what can you say? This guy could be a pretty good piece to add with that starting rotation with Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Miguel, and so forth. And let's not forget the Mets still have two pitchers that are currently on the injured roster that is expected to come back sometime during the summer. You got our Frankie Montas. He's another name. When he is healthy, he could definitely be a consistent contributor for this Mets starting rotation. And you got Sean Manaea, who was obviously the Mets' best pitcher last year and seemed to just not only revive himself in New York, but ultimately revive his career. So if you can get the 2024 version of Sean Manaea, and if Frankie Montas can go and turn the clock back to his Oakland days, his early Oakland days, and you got a nice starting rotation with Kodai Senga, David Peterson. Obviously, they're going to have to maneuver people around to see whether they're going to continue to have Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes has been a lot decent than I thought he would as a starting pitcher. So definitely shout out to that Mets pitching staff to at least unlock something in Clay Holmes. So I was one that was saying that, it's not going to work. He's going to go back to his name, Cardiac Clay. That's what I know him as when he was in a Yankee uniform. But he has definitely found something in a Met uniform. And again, shout out to this Mets pitching staff to be able to tap into what they saw when he was in a Yankee uniform, and obviously is galvanized to some success for the most part in a Met uniform thus far. So those are the moves that the Mets have to make. I think the more reasonable one to have, the more likely one for it to be having, I think they should at least consider making a call to Baltimore. Baltimore is in last place in the American League East. I definitely did not see that coming. I don't think any baseball fan definitely saw that coming. In fairness, they have been decimated with injuries throughout the course of the year, but I don't think no one seen this drop with this Baltimore Orioles ball club as far as where they're at, considering where they were last year. But if you can get a guy like Felix Bautista to pair up with that bullpen to be the bridge with Edwin Diaz and get yourself a starting pitcher, as well as a center fielder, the Mets are going to be pretty good. You could place Nimmo at left, have Soto at right, and ultimately play Brian Reynolds at center. There you go. That's your outfield core right there. That is your outfield core right there. And I think it will work wonders if, obviously, this is bearing health. I don't want to, get everybody's hopes up. Obviously, this is a long season, and this is all health permitting. But if they are able to swing some trades that can shift this current Mets team and get them one step closer to where they can be, this could be a much more dangerous team than they appear to be right now. So that's saying a lot, considering the fact that the Mets have the best record in the National League, if I'm not mistaken. So kudos to the coaching staff there with the New York Mets, and kudos to Uncle Stevie tapping in and forcing those moves, as well as the GM over there. So, okay, so with that, we're going to get to the big chunk of this segment. Obviously, we're going to talk New York Knicks wrap up. Um, Ultimately, Indiana was just the best team. They proved that within the entire series. Their fast-paced play was just too much for the Knicks to bear. And listen, it just wasn't gonna happen. They were just overwhelmed. They seemed lethargic at times. They seemed fatigued at times. And sometimes the opposing team can just read off that vibe and read off that body language. And once you see blood in the water, they just attack you like a shark. And that's exactly what I believe happened to the New York Knicks. For those who don't think that I'm bluffing here as far as the Knicks having the ability, I'll give you some numbers. I'll throw out some numbers to you right now. It seemed the one Achilles heel that really affected Tom Thibodeau's coaching ability is that instead of the thing that got me so confused about this entire series is that the Knicks were known to controlling paces of the game. They did that with the Pistons for the most part, even though they were able to run and gun with them a little bit. They did that for the most part during the Boston series. This was obviously pre Tatum injury, but for the most part, this Pacers team just thrives on pace. No pun intended. But that's pretty much their bread and butter as far as how they get their points. So just some numbers thrown at you right now. The Knicks were ranked 27th as far as pace points at 97.64 possession per 48 minutes, while the Pacers were ranked number 7 at 100.76. So that right there, those numbers in between tells you a lot as far as where the Knicks were as far as pace and where the Pacers were as far as pace. Uh, their defense stink. The Knicks defense it stunk. It was horrible. There's no other way to put it other than that. The Knicks gave up the second most points per 100 possessions of any team in a conference finals in the last 18 seasons. I mean, what can you say other than that? If you're giving up a lot of points, if you're giving up 100 plus points, and I think they did that 3 times during this series, it's very hard to come back and win games, especially when you're going pace by pace with this team that has a much up tempo pace to them. And that's exactly how Indiana gets their points. They kind of remind me a little bit of those Phoenix Suns teams back in the days with Steve Nash, Maurice Stoudemire, Sean Marion. I'm pretty sure people at home know what I'm talking about. That was a pretty good team. It's probably one of the best teams that I can think of currently when it comes to having a good team and not being able to win the championship. So this Pacers team is definitely gives me some Phoenix Suns 2000-ish vibes when it comes to their style of play. Turnovers. That's pretty much the one thing that killed the Knicks in the last game. They committed 18 turnovers, which is horrible. You're not going to win much games when you're turning the ball over because ultimately, especially in today's game, turnover turns into points. With that being said, the Knicks lost the turnover margin by a total of 93-75. There's only one game where the Knicks had less turnovers than the Pacers during the series. And again, as I reiterated a little while ago, these turnovers ultimately turn into points, in which the Pacers took advantage of as they dominated in that category by a score of 140-71 as far as points and turnovers. So, at the end of the day, the Knicks just seemed like they ran out of gas. Obviously, there was a lot of questions as far as Tom Thibodeau's ability to trust his bench as far as his rotational standpoint. I think for the most part, he was going with a 6 to 8 man rotation, whereas the Pacers were occupying with a 10 to 11 man rotation. So that pretty much equals why the Knicks weren't able to get the job done against the Indiana Pacers. But ultimately, we got to give credit where credit is due. Congratulations to Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers as Game 1 of the NBA Finals will begin tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder live in OKC. So we got those numbers out the way, obviously, and when you have certain a situation like this where you play bad, you exceed expectations. Obviously the Knicks weren't in this, but we, as far as Knicks fans, they haven't seen this type of Knicks run within the last 25 years with this New York Knicks franchise. So, unfortunately, this is the business side is sort of the thing that just cringes my skin a little bit because there's normally people that perhaps did deserve it. In this show, we're not going to call people out. We're not going to do that because I'm a big believer. At the end of the day, we look at these stars, we look at these coaches as like, superhuman people. But at the end of the day, they go about making a living just like we do. So we're not going to do that in the show as far as like bashing people and stuff like that. But, we are going to call people out and we are going to correct the mistakes that should have been made during that series. So, again, it was just unfortunate. But shout out to the Knicks fans, man. I mean, I've never seen nothing like that before. Madison Square Garden was just insane. 34th Street, 7th Avenue, just insane. I had a buddy of mine who sent me a video of a guy. I don't know how the hell he even got up there. He was on top of a billboard. I don't know how smart that is, but hey, shout out to him. But definitely New York fans go hard for their team. And it was just nice to see that city and that live action, that live vibe. It almost felt like the ball dropping in the middle of June, so May or June. So definitely shout out to the Knicks fans for their support in that team. But ultimately, the numbers that I put out there, I think those were the big primary reasons on why the Knicks were not able to figure out the Pacers. Another thing that I wanted to point out that, and I don't want to forget that, but Karl Anthony Towns. Those people that don't know, Karl Anthony Towns is 7 foot tall. 7 foot tall. He had one block that entire series. Since blocks became an actual statistic, there's no one that was worse as far as block percentages goes than Karl Anthony Towns as far as playing over 200 minutes. So again, we can all say, yeah, he seemed slowed down by injuries and stuff like that. Listen, this is the middle of the finals. I'm pretty sure everybody in OKC is going through their own injuries and stuff like that. Indiana is going through their own injuries, but ultimately, Karl Anthony Towns, you have to be a much better defensive stopper than that. It's just ridiculous. But ultimately, the Knicks just didn't play good defense. Indiana was able to get pretty much wherever they wanted to get from the Knicks, and they just simply had no answers. So before we get into the Tom Thibodeau situation, I want to just go over some things that let's just go over some off-season moves that the Knicks need to correct. Obviously, the first thing that I just pointed out a little ago is depth. Every good team that you needs that proper depth. You need somebody like a Reggie Jackson, that's going to come off, or a Manu Ginobili that's going to come off the bench and just give your second unit that type of energy as far as points, or just even if you can't score or don't have the ability to score at that current time, at least find a way to impact the game, just like Reggie Jackson and Manu Ginobili did with those good teams that they have. So I think depth is definitely a priority that General Manager Leon Rose has to address because if Tom Thibodeau felt like his only trust was 6 to 8 players, that's a problem. That's a problem. And I think that's why the Pacers were able to just thrive the way they did. I mean, they had 8 players who averaged 8 points a game, where the Knicks only had 5. And obviously, 5 of those was probably within their starting lineup. So that's something that the Knicks definitely need to address is their depth. One name that I could definitely see them at least they got to make the phone call to is Utah's Jackson. Oh man, I forgot it. Jackson. So definitely um they definitely gotta do something. You gotta make that call and make some sort of moves when it comes to that bench. I don't know where they're gonna get their moves from. You know, there seems to be some disgruntledness when it comes to maybe Tyler Hero in Miami. Maybe the Knicks can go and make a phone call as far as that, as far as his availability. But bench is definitely a huge necessity when it comes to the New York Knicks and their players as far as their bench because they have to get better. Colin Sexton is also a name that I would definitely look at as far as the Knicks entertainment. Obviously, the Knicks seem to like not flourish very well when it came to Brunson being off the floor. And ultimately, it seemed like the Knicks didn't function well if it wasn't for two players, in my opinion. That was Jalen Brunson on the offensive end and Mitchell Robinson on the defensive end. I sort of got a little tied up a little while ago. The name that I was looking for is Walker Kessler. So Walker Kessler is definitely a name that Knicks fans should definitely look into. He's a guy that can give you 15 points a game. You know, he can grab you some boards too, and it doesn't hurt to have more size when you talk about the New York Knicks bench and stuff like that. So I think he'll be a great complement to that bench, along with Miles McBride or and Mitchell Robinson and Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson has been a bona fide scorer since he entered the league a few years back with the Los Angeles Lakers. A proven scorer. Shot selection has always been his Achilles heel. Sometimes he just takes these stupid ass shots out of nowhere, and I definitely think that with his shot selection and just being in a new environment in New York, I think he will definitely flourish. So I think New York and definitely needs to make that call to Utah as far as Walker Kessler and Jordan Clarkson goes to fill up their bench a little bit. Obviously, as we went to press, we had some breaking news as far as the New York Knicks go. The team has come to terms with the firing of Tom Thibodeau. Uh, it's always difficult to make an assumption as far as why, the timing of things, and trying to make sense of it all. Here's a guy who just had a amazing tenure as the New York Knicks head coach. He had a record of 226 and 174, which is equivalent to a 565 winning percentage. Obviously, he was one of the best coaches the Knicks had in recent memory. But I don't think he deserved to be fired, honestly. I don't think he deserved it. 24 playoff wins during his 5 years in as Knicks head coach, including 4 playoff series wins. The last 12 coaches had a combined of 7. So that alone tells you, okay, if you're going to make this type of move right now, there needs to be some sort of successor. You got to find somebody that's going to be like, you know what? I think Tom Thibodeau's coaching style, this is as far as he's going to get this current New York team. This is as far as it's going to go. We think this guy is going to lead us to the promised land because ultimately you make this move. I don't believe that this is a Leon Rose move. I believe this had to do something with higher up, and I'm talking about James Dolan. So this just seems like a James Dolan move to do. But I don't think, considering the numbers that I threw out, Tom Thibodeau, he didn't. I don't think he deserved to have lost his job. Was there corrections that he needed to make during that playoff series? Absolutely, absolutely. Towards the last 2 or 3 games of that Pacers series, he did it. He played Shamit more. who played well when he was on the floor. Achua had some decent minutes when he was on the floor. DeLon Wright, who no one talks about, had decent minutes on the floor. And for the most part, when Brunson was out with that ankle injury, he pretty much had a fair share. Him and Miles McBride pretty much did a decent job during Brunson's absence. So, it's so easy to say, you know what, it's not what you did. It's not what you did for me back then. It's what you have done for me lately, which seems to be uh, the ultimate deciding decision as why the Knicks made their move. But at the end of the day, I just don't feel like this was the right move right now. I believe if you give Tom Thibodeau a decent bench to go with his starters, you know, and obviously the first thing people are going to say is, oh, well, he should have trusted his bench. I would agree with that. But obviously, coaches have a way of who they insert in the lineup as far as defensive matchups and just matchups in general, as far as what they feel comfortable with. Obviously, Tibbs wasn't so comfortable inserting someone like a Shamit or a Chua or a DeLon Wright until it was pretty much too late. Ultimately, to put this in a bow, I do think game one just sucked the air out of Madison Square Garden. It took all the air out of the Knicks team. They were up 17 in the fourth quarter. They were up by 9 by 50 with 58.8 seconds to go. So it was just unfortunate. It was just unfortunate. But listen, we have to tip our hat to Tom Thibodeau. He did an amazing job in 5 seasons as the head coach of the New York Knicks. He was the first coach in 25 years to take the New York Knicks to the conference finals, which is an amazing, and the first coach to take the Knicks to back-to-back 50-win seasons since the 1991-92 season and the 1994-1995 seasons. So, on behalf of everybody here at Our Time, myself and Our Time Press, we do wish Tom Thibodeau the very best in his future and endeavors. But just sad to just see a guy who is, for the most part, has success in New York, and we all know New York fans are tough. They're probably one of the most tough and grittiest fans around. And if you perform well, you're gonna be idolized like a superhero. And if you don't, your ass is gonna hear about it on the back page of the paper. So the most important thing is that the organization, Leon Rose, James Dolan, is there a successor? Because this for the most part, it's understandable why you would do it if you feel like the conference finals is as far as Tom Thibodeau will take this current roster. If you're thinking that, then okay, I can understand with you a little bit. I can cope with you just a little bit, but you gotta look at the guy's resume. In my opinion, there's no other coach right now. You gotta consider the fact that this Knicks job, this is not an easy job to take. I was watching the Yankee game the other day, and Rick Pitino, who is the current head coach to St. John's Red Storm, and he was asked by play-by-play announcer Michael Kay if he was interested in the Knicks head coaching vacancy, and he just flat out said absolutely not. Uh, and one of the things that he pointed out was that it does bring a large amount of pressure when it comes to being the head guy of the New York Knicks. And for the most part, I do agree. It does come with a lot of pressure, but if you thrive in this city, you will be rewarded. You will be rewarded with cheers. You will be rewarded with recognitions and things of that nature. And for the fact of the matter is that Leon Rose and Dolan felt like this was the right move to make right now. I don't know where they go from here, considering the fact that they've only won one playoff series since the year 2000, before Tom Thibodeau's arrival. So I really, I'm really trying to think about who will be a fit because again, you just can't plug in anybody there and just be like, hey, you're gonna coach the Knicks. It's just a different time. It's a different monster, and you know it's a big title to be the head coach of the New York Knicks. The same thing with the Boston Celtics. It's the same thing with the Los Angeles Lakers. Both, all three are storied franchises, and you need a winner. So, and this is for the most part, this is not something that happens right off the bat. This is quite common where you have a winning coach and they get fired. Rick Carlisle was the coach of the Pistons from 2001 and 2003. He ultimately got fired. The Pistons decided to go with Larry Brown, and ultimately they won the title in 2024. Mark Jackson, he got fired in 2014, and Golden State Warriors ultimately hired Steve Kerr, and Steve Kerr went on to win 4 titles with the Golden State Warriors, starting in 2015. David Blatt was fired in 2016 from the Cleveland Cavaliers. They ultimately brought in Ty Lue, and he ultimately won the title with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, again, we'll see. We shall see who is eligible out there, who is interested in this league's coach job. But let's go. Let's get to the phone lines. Let's put a poll out there. Do you guys feel that Tom Thibodeau should have been fired? And if so, who is suitable to replace him? Hello. Hi, how are you? You know what? It's we live in a day as far as sports currency where it's like, well, it's either the top player or it's the coach. And I'm not okay with that analogy because hello, do we still got you on the line? Hello? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. We seem to have lost you a little bit. But again, um, again, it's so easy to put the blame on the coach. Again, did he make the right moves? Maybe not. Yeah. So it's easy to say whether he's to blame to it or not. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the players got to go out and play. You know, the one Achilles heel that I did mention on the telecast just now is I wish that he could have gone to his bench a little bit more, where you could see, especially in that fifth game, Shamit, that combination of Shamit and DeLon Wright seemed to flourish pretty well for the most part, and it's sort of at least for the most part diminished the Pacers' running gun style. But I do not think he deserved to be fired. I think if he had you ultimately, considering the fact that where he had brought this New York team from where they were 5 years ago to where they are now, I would at least brought him back another year. Obviously, what concluded this year, he would have been in the hot seat. But ultimately, you got to go what's there right now. And considering the fact right now, unless there's a substantial successor out there that could take this Knicks team to an upper echelon, I don't know what Leon Rose is thinking. And the thing that really gets under my skin about Leon Rose and James Dolan is that they never provide anything to the public. They're the most quietest team when it comes to presenting information as far as providing it to the public. Why was this move made? Why now? Considering the fact that he beat a very good and gritty Detroit Pistons team. He beat the defending champion. Granted, Jason Tatum went down, but a lot of people, including myself, could say even with Tatum, they were going to win that series. So you ultimately got to make it make sense for me, you know. But I think to add on to your question, I think the only logical reason that I can come up with the Knicks making this decision is that they felt like, the old phrase where you hear, you can't teach a dog new tricks. Tom Thibodeau obviously coaches an old school style, and maybe the 1990s coaching style doesn't go with this type of style as far as today's NBA. Yeah, hello. Do we have another call? Yeah, so are you still on the line? Okay, yeah, so thank you for that call in. We got the hotline number up, so call in. And again, the poll question is: did Tom Thibodeau deserve to lose his job? I want to hear from the New York hopeful. Let's see what you guys got to say regarding that. Again, it's it's understandable for the most part, but if I have to put a percentage on it, I would say 55% of him staying and 45% of him going. Because again, I do understand why they would make it. I just I wouldn't ultimately go through with it. I think definitely there would have been a conversation that would have been held about as far as the direction they're going into, but at least have a conversation, put Tibbs in a room, and just tell him and just let him know, hey, we appreciate what you did this year. We would like to keep you on board. This is what we're going to do as far as the moves that we tend to make to consider making this team better. And again, do I believe this team has the potential of winning the NBA Finals? I did until they made this move with Tibbs. I feel like once they made that move with Tibbs, because the ultimate question is you don't know what you're gonna bring in. Again, you can't just bring somebody with lackadaisical coaching experience and just be like, hey, go ahead and run the Knicks. It just doesn't work like that. It just, for the most part, it just doesn't work like that. And I was pretty annoyed. I was pretty upset that that's the direction that they decided to go into. But hopefully there is a successor. In the meantime, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give the New York hopeful and the Our Time Universe potential coaching candidates. This is not something that's set in stone, but considering who I think there are good coaches that may be available, I'm gonna put out 5 coaches that I believe could withstand the pressure of New York, the expectations that's come with New York, and maybe and hopefully somebody that will be willing to take the New York Knicks job. Mike Malone. Obviously, Mike Malone is a proven NBA champion. He's just 2 years, 2 or 3 years removed, I think 2 years removed from winning a championship with the Denver Nuggets along with Nikola Jokic. There was some rumors that spread it within the season that although the Nuggets did have another impressive season, that there was some friction between him and Jokic. Again, we just go what has been said from various reports. We don't know if that was a thing or not. Obviously, those two gentlemen know what their relationship was towards the beginning and towards the end of it. But Mike Malone, he's a New York guy. He's from the area. You bring him in. He's a proven winner. But considering the rumors that we heard with his downfall with the Nuggets is, can he elevate his players and can he ultimately get the respect and get 100% out of his players? Taylor Jenkins. Taylor Jenkins is also another coaching candidate who has had his share of success more recently with the Memphis Grizzlies. Jenkins was let go earlier this year by the Memphis Grizzlies, and Again, his situation as far as his coaching style, it's pretty much it's almost similar, not all the way similar to how Malone goes. He doesn't have New York experience where I ultimately would go with the Knicks having somebody that will bring a tough demeanor when it comes because when you think about listen, we're supposed to be tough, man. White tees, Yankee hats, Timberlands. We're supposed to have that grit when it comes to New York sports, especially New York basketball. This is the mecca of basketball. So you need to bring in a guy who, number one, is going to challenge you to get better. Number two, who's going to elevate your game, and number three, who's not gonna be afraid to hold you accountable. So is Taylor Jenkins the answer for New York? I don't know in particular. I'm not sure if he is even considered for this next job. This is obviously my personal mock predictions as far as potential Knicks candidates, and we should see how this unfolds and how quick how desperate the Knicks are as far as addressing their coaching vacancy. Um, and number three, well, the last three, they're pretty much like super dark horses. They're like, if they make this move, it'll sort of make sense, but it won't make 100% sense unless it's unfolded. Um, you look at a guy like Royal Ivy. Royal Ivy is obviously a former NBA basketball player, played a handful of years in the NBA. He is an assistant coach currently for the Houston Rockets. And word around the sports community is that is he has an infectious personality. Players respect him. Players want to play for him, and ultimately, between him and Ime Udoka, they sort of created this amazing, amazing core in Houston. Listen, I'll tell you one thing: if you were to tell me that Houston would be top three in the West this year, I would have been like, something's wrong with you. You obviously doing something because there's just no way it's going to happen. But to take this team and bring it up from where they were last year as opposed to this year in a very, 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 very intense and challenging Western Conference, listen, you got to tip your hat off. And I think Royal Ivory definitely, if not the Knicks, he should definitely be considered for other head coaching vacancies throughout the NBA. I think just his current style of play, as far as how Houston plays, they got a lot of they got a mixture of good mixture of young players and core veterans to go with that core that they have right there. So if the Knicks are able to bring in a guy of Royal Ivy's caliber, maybe this will be the one move that the Knicks make that actually makes sense. Number two, we're gonna go with and I know I'm gonna get a lot of stares when I say this, but let's just say, let's just say if they were somehow able to lure this man away from H Town and bring him in a New York Knicks uniform. Well, his playing days are over, but Ime Udoka, maybe. I mean, we've seen what he's done in Boston. We've seen what he's done in Houston. You get a guy like that who has proven to get a bunch of players' faces, who's not afraid to hold players accountable, who preaches defense and ultimately gets the best player. He gets the best out of his players. Considering what the Houston guys going on right now, and considering how good they've been the past two couple of years, I don't know what it would take for Udoka to be lured away from Houston to New York, but that will be a very, very hot pick, and I will absolutely love, 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 love this move for the New York Knicks if they were able to lure away Ime Udoka. In my opinion, he's one of the best coaches in the NBA currently. The number one move, in my opinion, and this may come off as some shockwave, but you know what? This is Sports Talk with your boy Eddie. This is what we do. We got to make some shockwaves every now and then. But from what I've read and from what I've heard, this guy is a former player. During his playing days, he was just a magician when it comes to the basketball, especially passing the basketball. He's a point guard. He has played with current players that are in the NBA right now. I'm talking about Rajon Rondo. Former players have said if anybody is gonna talk about, because I know everybody was talking about last year as far as JJ Redick's ability to coach. Like, I know he says he wants to coach, but the fact is, or the question is, does he have the ability to coach? Obviously, for the most part, I think JJ Redick has put those questions to rest, and for the most part, as far as Rondo's IQ, as far as how he played, and from what the NBA world is saying as far as his coaching abilities, what better guy do you want to have a guy who, yes, doesn't have coaching experience at the NBA level? He has worked out um, with a bunch of NBA players. I think he's been a consultant for a few NBA teams since his retirement. So you bring in a guy who obviously knows how to play in a hostile environment, and I think this will be the perfect coach for Jalen Brunson to have, considering the fact that both of them during their time, obviously the different time as far as their prime level. But when Rondo was in his prime, like I said, Rondo was an offensive guru with the basketball. So if he has the ability to coach and untap another gear to Jalen Brunson, is just going to make Jalen Brunson a lot more dangerous, and it's going to make that team look a lot more intriguing as far as free agency attraction goes. So, although I don't know how that would look as far as going from a guy who has proven to be a winner in Tom Thibodeau, then going to a guy who has no sort of coaching experience. But you know, I think the safest bet would be to go for a coach who has the passion to coach, who has played in this league, who has played with some players in this league, and has close relationships with current NBA players that are currently in the league right now. So, yeah, those are my top 5 coaching candidates to that the Knicks should at least make the phone call to. At least make the phone call to consider it, because the Tom Thibodeau thing, unless, I know they came out with a statement which I felt was fugazi, just like it was just a way to just tell us, hey, well, we did this and we felt like, this was the right move and we just appreciate Tom Thibodeau and his future endeavors. Yeah, that's all great at the end of the day. Anybody could have said that. My 6-year-old niece could have wrote that. The fact of the matter is, you make a move like this, which is a major move in my opinion. Talk about it. Share with the public. At least let the New York fans know your vision of why you made this move. We need to know. We should know. Because honestly, I'll be honest with you. In the back of my mind, did I think it had a possibility of happening? Yes. When I found out, I was in utter shock, because it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, it's maybe, maybe not. And then when it actually happens and come into fruition, it's like, oh damn, like, wow, they actually went through with it. So it's going to be very interesting to see who the Knicks elect to go with as Tom Thibodeau's successor. And that's pretty much the move that they have to make. It has to be somebody who's going to be a great successor of Tom Thibodeau. I did hear one name that I didn't mention. I didn't feel like it didn't make sense to mention, was Jeff Van Gundy. Jeff Van Gundy, I love him when he's on the telecast of games. Him and Mark Jackson, they just crack me up, man. Two of the most entertaining sports telecasters that we got calling NBA games. I think he's been an assistant coach for the Houston Rockets, if I'm not mistaken, currently. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if you hire a guy like Jeff Van Gundy, obviously New York fans know what he's about. He has success with the New York Knicks back in the '90s, the glory days when they had Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Anthony Mason. Those good gritty guys right there. But it goes back to the point where I think became the ultimate reason on why the Knicks made this move. he has an old school mentality of coaching, and I ultimately think if the Knicks, if I had to come up with a reason as to why the Knicks made this move, it's because they felt like this was pretty much going to be the team ceiling with Tom Thibodeau at the helm. That's the only logical reason that I can think of as far as why would they make this move right now. Because other than that, it just doesn't make sense unless they. Another thing is this, and this is obviously a long shot, but now that my thinking is starting to come into fruition more as I'm conversing with you guys. Could it be? And again, this is a long shot. Could it be where? And I don't know if this is a part of if you go as far as like tampering, whatever, but could it be that a potential superstar has shown interest in playing for the Knicks and their wish was to play for a coach, not Tom Thibodeau? That's the only thing that I can think of. But as far as making trades, I don't know what the hell the Knicks are gonna do, honestly. And this is a part of the reason why I felt Leon Rose needs to get his ass up on a podium and speak and say why he made that move to what he did. Why he decided to give Brooklyn 5 first-round picks, 4 unprotected, for a guy who's never made the All-Star team. Explain that to us. Again, when they made the move for Karl-Anthony Towns, you pretty much know you were getting a former #1 overall pick. Obviously, his ties of being Dominican descent, it was going to play a contributing factor in the New York area, especially my people is over there in Washington Heights. But ultimately, it made sense to make that move because you knew what you were getting. And the one thing that the Knicks lacked last year's team, as opposed to this year's team, which was spacing, which Karl-Anthony Towns provided with him and Brunson at the helm. But I think if you really look at the other side of the coin, they lost a lot of toughness. And I think that's where Randall and Dante DiVincenzo provided that for this current Knicks team as far as last year goes. So, yeah, Leon Rose, get on the podium, man. Talk your talk and just let us know why. Why did it make sense to give away 5 first-round picks, 4 protected for a guy who's never made an All-Star team? What do you average? 12 points a game during that Pacers series? At best, he should have been the third option, either him or OG. And that's another thing. We could slice and dice this all we want. The fact of the matter is, there's obviously going to be new moves made, but whoever is on the current roster has to be better. OG Anunoby, they signed him to a 5-year, $200+ million, and most of it was for your defense. His defense was lethargic, if you ask me, and his ability to score the ball. I mean, you would think within those practices that he had with Pascal Siakam back in their Toronto days, that he would at least have a feel on how to play Siakam. But him nor anybody on the Knicks roster had a damn answer for Siakam. He had 32 points, 39 points that first game. And I think he had another 30 piece in a previous game that he had with them during that current series. So, again, there's just a lot of questions that need to be answered. Let's get those calls going. Let's see what do you guys think. Do you guys think that Tom Thibodeau should have been fired? Me personally, I don't. But it's interesting to see who is going to take over for this New York Knicks team. Just the thing that just gets me flustered with everybody as far as the Knicks, organization is that they just never really provide anything public. And you want people to be invested. You want people to know what's going on. You want people to know why you're making these decisions. If you don't have anything that's worth having a volume to go with, where people can be like, you know what, that kind of makes sense, or this kind of makes sense. But this was a move for the most part that came out of nowhere. This this was a move that came out of nowhere. So you know, I ultimately think that it was just a bad move, man. It was just when I went and heard about it, I was pretty ticked off. I was pretty ticked off about it. But yeah, we got to get to the bottom of it to see what was Leon Rose. What was his thinking process as far as making this move? Obviously, we all know what this move James Dolan has to do with it, and we don't know if he has spoken to anybody in years the way he operates. So yeah, so we gotta ultimately see what's going on as far as why this decision was made, because this honestly this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense, and we gotta just figure out why this was made. Again, this is a guy who's a proven winner, although his coaching style may have been a little outdated. I think that could easily be fixed with putting a more consistent core when it comes to the bench. Because if you really look at that series, Jalen Brunson was pretty much their savior. Jalen Brunson was pretty much their savior. And, you ultimately got to think you need another person. And again, I know it was reported a couple of days ago that Karl Anthony Towns, was playing with a torn ligament in his thumb, and he had the knee contusion that he had suffered in Game 3 of the Boston series. But at the end of the day, you still got to go out there and play the games, man. This is New York City. This is New York City, and high risk comes high reward, and we do. This is a town that has high expectations as far as winning. But the only thing I want to come out of this, whether it happens within a couple of hours, whether it becomes within a couple of days, we gotta get to the bottom to this Tom Thibodeau thing. I just can't let this go. I just can't let this go. Good coach, good guy, but is there somebody that they had in mind? Someone that they had in mind? Again, I gave you the potential coaches that the Knicks may look at. I do not know if there's going to be a dark horse outside of those names that I provided. But yeah, it's just I just it's tough. It's tough when you have a guy who has granted so much success, especially within the past 5 years. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what the Knicks decided to go with, and New York Knicks fans have to just cope with it and see how this team gets better this year. I don't know. I know the first thing is people are gonna say, "Oh man, Giannis. Let's see if we can get Giannis." What draft compensation do the Knicks currently have after what the hell they gave up to Brooklyn for Mikal Bridges? I'm not quite sure. I'm not 100% sure on that, but you know, I just don't know. And then it's like the thing is, you're not just going to just have Milwaukee hand you a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis Antetokounmpo can give you 30 points and 12 rebounds in his sleep. He's one of the best, in my opinion. He is a top 5, top 10 NBA player in the league easily, without a doubt. So the question is, do the Knicks have the draft compensation? Because what I don't want another Carmelo Anthony effect, where that one year where they traded pretty much, they gutted the whole damn team just to get Carmelo Anthony when they had a good team and played that year. Come to find out, there was a good possibility, considering Carmelo Anthony's roots to New York, being born in Red Hook, that there would have been some interest of him wanting to come to New York to begin with, where the Knicks didn't have to make that trade. And ultimately, were they more exciting to watch? Yes. But It's kind of like the same thing with this current New York teams. They lack depth when they made that current move. It's as simple as that. They lack the depth with this current move. So again, as I reiterated earlier in the show, if the Knicks were going to make a move, it probably would not be a swing for the fence type of move. It would more likely be something small. I wouldn't necessarily call it mediocre, but if you can get a guy, again, I name three players. They just happen to be Utah. If they are going to make a big move, maybe, just maybe, Tyler Hero. I'm not sure how that pairing of him and Brunson will be as far as the two guards go when you have Josh Hart, who for the most part is capable of playing that unless you insert him as a small forward, which probably won't happen considering the fact that you got OG who's probably going to operate between small forward and power forward. But the number one guy I will look for the time being, unless we get a full trajectory as what free agency is going to look like, would probably be Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler, definitely. Russell Westbrook, I know is a free agent out there. I'm not sure how intrigued he would be to play on the East Coast. He's always been proven to want to play for the West Coast. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the future lies for the New York Knicks and what necessarily moves they're going to make. So, yeah, that's gonna be it for this telecast. I want to thank everybody for joining in, and stay warm out there, stay hydrated, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. You have to stop this.